Divorced women who left for rich guy. How did you react when rich guy dumped you? Story 1. My ex-wife left me for a private jet guy she met at a charity gala. We'd been married 9 years, 2 kids, normal life. She told me I was comfortable, and he was visionary. Then she moved into his penthouse and started posting champagne sunsets like she'd invented happiness. I didn't clap back. I just did 2 things. Filed for a strict custody schedule and stopped trying to decode her decisions like they were my homework. The kids and I settled into a quieter routine. Soccer, homework, freezer pizza, actual sleep. 8 months later, she called me at midnight, crying so hard I thought someone died. Turns out the jet guy had restructured. Translation: he was dating a younger woman and wanted my ex out by Friday because his brand needed a fresh energy. She said, "I think he used me." I sat there listening, feeling something I didn't expect. Relief, not triumph. Relief that I wasn't the one begging a stranger to be decent. I told her I was sorry she was hurting, but I wasn't her emergency landing anymore. I offered a ride to pick up the kids' stuff from the penthouse and a list of local therapists. That was it. She tried to come back, not to me, just to the life we had. I kept it boring and firm. You can be their mom, you can't be my wife. When she asked how I stayed so calm, I said, because you already left. The rest is just paperwork. Story 2. I'm a divorce attorney. A woman I'll call Mara hired me to finalize her split with her husband. She arrived in designer sunglasses and confidence. She kept repeating, "My boyfriend is handling everything." Boyfriend was a flashy developer who paid for her new apartment, her car, and a suspicious number of business trips. During negotiations, Mara refused a fair settlement because she believed she was upgrading into a lifestyle that made alimony look like pocket change. She wanted the fastest divorce possible so she could start her real life. We warned her, twice in writing, that dependence on a non-spouse is a legal cliff. 4 months after the divorce decree, she showed up again. No sunglasses, no confidence. She held her phone like it was a grenade. The developer had sent a 2-sentence text. "This isn't working. My accountant says I need to simplify." Then he blocked her. Not even a dramatic fight, just a receipt-free exit. She asked me if we could undo the divorce. People think there's a reverse button. There isn't. She asked if we could force him to keep supporting her. We couldn't. She asked if her ex-husband would have to help. He didn't. My reaction was professional, but honest. I slid her the copy of the settlement she insisted on and said, "This document is your new reality." It was brutal watching the moment she realized the fancy relationship had never been a safety net, just a borrowed costume. She rebuilt slowly, got a job, downsized, learned to budget. A year later, she sent me a postcard. Never letting someone else's money replace my own plan again. That's the only kind of revenge that actually lasts. Story 3. I was the best friend who got iced out when my friend Kira left her husband for a rich older guy from her Pilates studio. She told me her marriage was dead, and this new guy finally saw her. Then she stopped answering calls unless it was to show me her new bag or her vacation suite with a bathtub bigger than my kitchen. Kira's ex wasn't perfect, but he was steady. He handled bedtime stories and dentist appointments while she played the role of woman reborn. She even joked that she was retired now. I kept my opinions to myself because sometimes people don't want truth. They want applause. The rich guy dumped her in the most ridiculous way. During a weekend at a resort, he handed her a gift box. Inside was a keychain with a tiny house charm and a note that said he'd bought her a starter home an hour outside the city so we can have space. Translation: he wanted her far away. She laughed, thinking it was a surprise proposal. It wasn't. He told her he was getting back with his ex-wife for optics because he was running for a board seat and needed the family look. He offered Kira transition money if she signed an NDA about their relationship. When she refused, the money vanished. When she raised her voice, hotel security appeared like he'd pre-ordered them. Kira called me from the parking lot, mascara streaked, whispering like she'd been robbed. I felt angry. Not because she got dumped, but because she'd bet her whole identity on someone else's power. I didn't say "I told you so." I said, "Come to my place, eat something, sleep." The next morning we called a counselor, then her ex to coordinate the kids, then a realtor to get her out of fantasy living and into something real. She asked me why I wasn't gloating. I told her the truth. I'm not happy you fell. I'm happy you finally stopped letting someone buy the steering wheel. Story 4. My brother's ex-wife left him for a crypto influencer. Not quiet wealth rich, loud rich, Lambos in rental lots, neon watches, motivational speeches that sounded like a pyramid scheme with better lighting. She said my brother was small-minded for wanting stability. A month after she moved out, She turned into a walking advertisement. Every meal was filmed. Every outfit had a tag. She made my niece call the influencer uncle. My brother stayed painfully polite because family court does not reward sarcasm, even when it's deserved. The dumping happened in public. The influencer got exposed for faking screenshots of his portfolio. Sponsors dropped him. He posted a crying apology video, then disappeared. A week later, my brother's ex showed up at his apartment with 3 suitcases and a ring light, asking if she could stay until things settle. My reaction? I laughed. Then I felt guilty for laughing because my niece was behind her looking exhausted. But my brother didn't laugh. He did something colder and smarter. He opened the custody app, documented the visit, and said, "You can't move in, but you can have the guest room tonight so our daughter feels safe." She tried to charm her way back into family. My brother refused. He offered a list: affordable apartments, job sites, the number for a co-parenting mediator. She called him heartless. He replied, "I'm not heartless. I'm done being your backup plan." The best part wasn't her humiliation. It was my niece telling me later, "Dad doesn't yell anymore. Our house is calm." That's when I realized the influencer dumping her wasn't karma. It was a door closing so my brother could finally lock the right ones. Story 5. I'm the ex-husband in this one, and the weirdest thing is how quickly I stopped being angry. My ex-wife, Dana, left after 13 years for a wealthy restaurant owner she met when we were working on ourselves. She framed it like a spiritual awakening. She deserved abundance. I was blocking her growth. He was aligned. In practice, it meant she moved into his luxury condo, and I became the default parent to our son. She didn't just leave me. She rewrote history. Suddenly, I was controlling because I asked about school schedules. I was lazy because I didn't want to network at midnight. She started wearing his wealth like armor. She'd drop our son off in a car that smelled like leather and victory and talk to me like I was a cashier. I rebuilt quietly. Therapy. A better job. Cooking actual meals instead of surviving on resentment. I stopped checking her social media after I realized it always ended with me doom-scrolling in the dark like a raccoon. Then Dana showed up at my door on a Tuesday afternoon, eyes swollen, hair in a messy bun, no jewelry. She looked like someone who'd been fired from a role. She said, "He ended it. He says I'm too complicated." The story spilled out in pieces. The restaurant guy didn't want a partner. He wanted a mascot. He loved her when she was easy, smiling at openings, posing for photos, laughing at his jokes. But when she asked about being included in long-term plans, he said she was bringing divorce energy into his brand. When she mentioned moving closer to our son's school, he said his condo was adult space. When she wanted to meet his friends as something other than the girlfriend, he said labels were pressure. He dumped her the morning after she called him out for flirting with a hostess. He told her she should be grateful for the experience, then had his assistant schedule movers, like she was furniture being returned. Dana stood in my doorway waiting for me to explode or beg or celebrate. I didn't do any of that. I felt sad, not for losing her, for watching someone gamble their life on a man who treated commitment like a subscription he could cancel. I told her, "I'm sorry. You can't stay here, but I'll take our son to dinner tonight so you can breathe." She started to argue, then stopped. Like she remembered she no longer had leverage. She asked, very small, "Do you hate me?" I said, "I used to. Now I mostly hate what this did to our kid." That landed harder than yelling. She got an apartment. She got a job. She stopped posting quotes about abundance. Months later, she apologized without excuses. No astrology, no growth, no blame. I accepted it. Not because we were getting back together, but because carrying anger was starting to feel like still being married. And the restaurant guy? He's already dating someone new. I don't check anymore. I'm too busy living the life Dana thought was small and realizing it's the only one that actually holds. Story 6. My ex-wife left me for a Dubai tech investor who flew in once a month and showered her with gifts like it was confetti. She said she was tired of counting pennies and wanted a man who knew how to live. I didn't scream. I signed the papers, asked for a clean custody schedule, and put my energy into work and our kid. For 6 months, she posted yacht decks, skyline breakfasts, and captions about abundance. Then, silence. No stories, no quotes, nothing. A week later, she called me from an unknown number. Her voice sounded smaller, like she'd been living in someone else's echo. He dumped her by email. Not even a fight. Just, "This relationship is no longer aligned with my priorities," and a list of logistics from his assistant about returning company items, which apparently included the apartment keys and the credit card he'd given her. She told me she was locked out of the condo with 2 suitcases and a makeup bag, waiting for security to let her grab the rest of her things. My reaction surprised both of us. I wasn't happy. I was just done. Done with the drama. Done with being the person she called only when her fantasy ran out of fuel. I told her I'd pick up our kid from school and keep him overnight. I told her to call her sister, not me. She asked if she could come home for a while. I said, "You can come home to be his mom at pickup time, not to be my wife." She accused me of being cold. I said, "Cold is dumping someone through a stranger in an email." Then I hung up and made dinner with my son. That night, he told me he liked our place better because it felt real. That was the first time since the divorce I slept without clenching my jaw. Story 7. My cousin's wife left him for a famous surgeon, like local celebrity famous. The kind of guy who had a Wikipedia page and hosted charity dinners. She started calling herself a doctor's wife before the ink was dry on the divorce. She redecorated her whole personality into something glossy. Expensive skincare, curated laughs, networking instead of friends. My cousin didn't spiral. He did the unsexy stuff. Paid down debt, upgraded his skills, spent weekends coaching their son's team. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. The surgeon dumped her after she got too visible. That's the phrase she used, sobbing, in my car. Apparently, she'd been pushing for an engagement. And he didn't want a second wife. He wanted a companion who didn't ask questions. When she posted a photo with his kids in the background, his ex-wife threatened court. The next day, he told her she was creating risk and that he needed peace. He didn't even break up in person. He had his office manager call her to arrange the return of her things from his house, like she was a package with a tracking number. Her first instinct was to run back to my cousin, convinced she could reset the timeline. She showed up at his door with that polished voice, saying she'd made a mistake. My cousin opened the door, looked at her, and asked one question: "Are you here because you miss me, or because he tossed you out?" She couldn't answer without lying, and he could hear it in the pause. He didn't insult her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stepped aside so their son could say hi, then told her, "You can be his mom. You can't be my wife again." Watching that, my reaction was pure respect. She expected drama. She got boundaries. And boundaries hit harder than rage when someone is used to escaping consequences with charm. Story 8. My best friend's mom left her dad for a wealthy businessman when we were in high school. I remember because everyone's parents whispered about it at PTA like it was a Netflix plot. She moved into a gated community, started wearing white linen like she was always on vacation, and acted like her old life was a temporary glitch. Her dad was the quiet type. He didn't fight in public. He didn't trash her. He just focused on my friend and her little brother, learning to braid hair and cook food that wasn't tragic. Their house became the safe house. 2 years later, the businessman dumped her in the coldest way imaginable. He announced at a dinner party that he was reconciling with his wife for the children's sake. My friend's mom was sitting right there. Everyone laughed awkwardly like it was a joke, and he kissed her cheek like she was a guest. She showed up at her old house the next morning, mascara running, asking to talk to her ex as adults. My friend's dad let her in, gave her tea, listened. When she said, "I didn't think he'd do this to me," he replied, "I did. That's why I didn't chase you." Her face collapsed like someone pulled the plug on a performance. She asked if she could move back until she finds her footing. He said no, calmly, not cruelly. He offered to help her find a rental and said she could come over for family dinners so the kids didn't feel like their mom was a stranger. But he wouldn't restart the marriage. My reaction, as a teenager watching adults, was this. I thought forgiveness meant taking someone back. But what he showed was better. Kindness without surrender. He could be compassionate and still protect the home he rebuilt. That's the kind of strength people don't post online, but it's the only kind that holds up. Story 9. My ex-wife left me for a guy who owned a chain of gyms. Not old money, more like new money with a neon sign. He drove a loud car and called everyone boss. She fell for the lifestyle. VIP rooms, bottles, people greeting her like she mattered. When she left, she told me I was too predictable. I told her predictability is just another word for reliability, but she was already gone. The breakup came fast. She found out he was running the same script on multiple women, promising each one a future while collecting attention like memberships. The day she confronted him, he laughed and said, "You knew what this was." Then he posted a selfie with another woman the same night, like it was a marketing campaign. She called me expecting sympathy and maybe a doorway back into my life. My reaction was weirdly practical. I asked, "Are you safe? Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" She said she didn't. I told her I'd book her a cheap hotel for 2 nights, because I didn't want her sleeping in her car. But after that, she needed a plan that didn't involve me. She snapped, "So you're just going to abandon me?" I said, "You abandoned us. I'm just not volunteering to be abandoned again." Later, she tried to rewrite it as, "We both made mistakes." That's when I got sharp. No, I said. You made a choice. I made boundaries. She ended up moving in with a friend and getting a job again. The best part? Months later, she told me she finally understood why my calm felt like a wall. It wasn't a wall. It was the door I built after she proved she didn't respect open ones. Story 10. My sister-in-law left my brother for a wealthy politician's son. The kind of guy who didn't pay for dinner. His parents did. She started talking like she had a PR team. Suddenly everything was image, connections, the right rooms. She told my brother he was holding her back from a bigger life. The politician's son dumped her right before an election season. Not because he fell out of love, because she was complicated. She had a divorce record, kids, and an ex-husband who existed as a real person, not a background character. His family decided she didn't fit the campaign optics. She got one phone call from his mother, not him, his mother, saying they appreciated her time but needed to focus on family priorities. Then she was blocked by everyone like she'd never happened. She came to my brother's house with a suitcase and a rehearsed speech. My brother listened quietly, then said, "You want me to rescue you from the consequences of chasing status?" She started crying, saying she'd been manipulated. My brother didn't mock her. He just asked, "Where was your empathy when you watched our kids cry and still posted champagne photos?" That silence was brutal. His reaction was the cleanest boundary I've ever seen. He offered to help her coordinate parenting and nothing else. No moving in. No second chance relationship. Just co-parenting with rules. She tried to shame him. "If you were a real man, you'd forgive me." He replied, "A real man protects his peace so his kids can have it too." And honestly, that line rewired something in my head. Because she expected anger. He gave her maturity. And maturity is the one thing rich guys can't buy and losers can't fake for long. Story 11. My ex-wife left me for her mentor, a venture capital guy who spoke in bullet points and treated every dinner like a pitch meeting. She told me he challenged her and that I was too simple. The truth was uglier. He had a lake house and a circle of people who clapped when he entered a room. After the divorce, she started dressing like she was always on a panel discussion. She'd drop our daughter off and casually mention Singapore next week, or the Hamptons for a retreat. I stayed polite. I stopped reacting, because reactions were the only thing she still tried to take from me. 9 months later, she showed up at my place unannounced, holding a tote bag like a lifeboat. She didn't even sit down at first, just paced and said, "He ended it." I asked how. She said he called it a strategic shift. Apparently his friends didn't like that she wasn't independently impressive, not successful enough on her own. He'd been funding her glow up, then decided she was an expense, not an asset. The part that made my stomach turn. He gave her a spreadsheet, a literal spreadsheet, items he'd bought, support he'd provided, and a final line, "No further obligations." She was crying, saying she felt like a leased car being returned. I didn't gloat. I looked at her and said, "That's how you talked about our marriage, like a project." She flinched, because it was true. She asked if she could stay for a few weeks. I told her no, but I offered to drive her to her sister's and keep our daughter overnight so she could regroup without panicking in front of a kid. She kept staring at me like she couldn't understand why I was kind but not available. I said, "I don't hate you. I just learned not to confuse compassion with reconciliation." Story 12. My neighbor's wife left him for a wealthy divorcee who owned several car dealerships. She started acting like she'd been rescued from poverty, even though she'd lived in a perfectly fine house with a perfectly normal husband. The new guy got her a Range Rover within a month. She posted it with a caption like, "Finally valued." The husband, my neighbor, didn't post anything. He just started walking their dog alone, every morning, looking like someone carrying a heavy bag without handles. A year later, she came back to the neighborhood in a rented sedan. No Range Rover, no sparkle. I saw her sitting in her car outside her old house for 20 minutes, like she was trying to memorize the courage to get out. Turns out the dealership guy dumped her because she embarrassed him at a work event by calling herself his wife. He wasn't married to her. He never planned to be. He liked having her around for weekends and photos, but he didn't want legal ties. When she pushed for an actual ring, he said, "You should be grateful for what you got," and ended it right after. Here's the kicker. She'd helped him renovate a property with her own labor and money, believing it was their future. My neighbor's reaction was quietly savage. He opened the door, listened, then said, "I'm sorry that happened. But you didn't come back because you miss me. You came back because you lost your sponsor." She tried to argue, but even she couldn't deny it. He offered to help her move her boxes to her sister's and told her she could come by for the dog's vet paperwork because it was technically still in his name. That was it. Watching him, I realized closure isn't a speech. Sometimes it's just a calm no that finally ends the conversation. Story 13. My ex-wife left for a man who owned a luxury construction company. He had the watches, the suits, the "my time is money" voice. She said she wanted a provider and was tired of splitting everything with me like roommates. The irony? I was the one paying most of the bills, but she didn't want stability. She wanted theater. For months, she flaunted it. Expensive dinners, surprise trips, a new smile that looked borrowed. Our son would come home talking about Dad 2's big house and Dad 2's pool. I swallowed it, because correcting a kid's excitement feels like punishing them for being happy. Then she got dumped the moment she stopped being convenient. The rich guy's business hit trouble. Permits, lawsuits, who knows? Suddenly she was stressful. He told her she'd change the vibe. He offered her money to start fresh somewhere else, as long as she signed a paper agreeing she wouldn't mention him online or to anyone in their circle. She didn't sign. So he shut off everything. Cards, access, even the phone plan in his name. She called me from a gas station, crying because her card declined and she couldn't even buy a bottle of water. My reaction was pure survival mode. I transferred her enough for a hotel and food, because my son's mother shouldn't be stranded. But I told her, "This is not a bridge back to me. It's a rope so you don't drown." She said, "I thought he loved me." I said, "He loved how you made him feel." That's when she got quiet. 2 weeks later, she asked if we could try again. I told her no. I didn't say it with anger. I said it like a fact. I don't want a partner who treats love like a contest. Now we co-parent. She's rebuilding. I'm not cheering for her pain, but I'm grateful for the lesson. Anyone can buy a lifestyle. Not everyone can show up when the lifestyle disappears. Story 14. My aunt left her husband for a wealthy spiritual teacher. Yes, that sentence still makes me tired. The guy ran expensive retreats and had followers who spoke about him like he was a saint with a platinum Amex. My aunt said her marriage was low vibration and that this man expanded her consciousness. She moved into his fancy house and started wearing all white, like she was in a constant music video. She cut off family members who questioned it, calling them negative. Her ex-husband just kept caring for their teenage daughter, quietly absorbing the chaos. The dumping was brutal and oddly corporate. The guru told her she was attached, and that attachment was blocking his mission. He said she needed to leave to heal independently. Then one of his assistants, an assistant, handed her a list of boundaries, including no contact for 90 days, like a detox plan. She came back to her ex-husband's house expecting to reclaim the old life. He listened, then asked, "Do you still believe I'm low vibration?" She hesitated. That hesitation was the whole answer. His reaction was the most dignified refusal I've ever seen. He said, "You're welcome to come for dinner with our daughter. You're welcome to be her mother. But you can't move back in. I won't let you destabilize her again." My aunt tried to cry her way into sympathy. He didn't insult her. He didn't punish her. He just protected the kid. Months later, my aunt admitted the guru had dumped other women the same way. It wasn't enlightenment. It was a rotation. And the only thing more expensive than his retreats was the price of believing you're special in someone else's scam. Story 15. My ex-wife left for a man with quiet money, the kind that doesn't post photos but owns half the town. She met him through her new friend group and started acting like I was an embarrassing hobby she'd outgrown. She said, "I want someone established, like I was a pop-up shop." After the divorce, she disappeared into that world. Better schools, better parties, better everything. I focused on my career and our kids. I stopped trying to compete with wealth because you can't outspend someone who's not spending, just existing. Then she got dumped without a scandal, which almost made it worse. The rich guy's family didn't want her. They never did. She wasn't from the right background, and having kids with an ex was seen as messy. One day she was invited to everything. The next day, the invite stopped. He told her gently that he couldn't fight his family forever. She came to me and said, "It wasn't about you. I just wanted security." That sentence hit me like a slap because she didn't realize what she'd admitted. She married money, not love, and she called it growth. My reaction was calm but final. I told her, "Security isn't a man. It's choices you can stand on even when people leave." She asked if I'd ever take her back. I said no, not because I wanted her punished, because I finally liked the life I built without walking on eggshells. She's working now, living smaller, and learning what I learned the hard way. If your comfort depends on one person's approval, you don't have comfort. You have a lease. Story 16. My ex-wife left me for a CFO type who owned a vacation condo and talked about money like it was a personality trait. She said she was tired of struggling, even though we weren't struggling. We were just normal. The day she moved out, she hugged our son like she was going to summer camp, not detonating his home. For a while, she lived like a highlight reel. New wardrobe, weekend flights, fancy dinners where the plates looked like modern art. She kept sending me passive-aggressive texts about how some men know how to treat a woman. I stopped replying unless it was about our kid. Then the CFO dumped her the moment she asked for a real commitment. She told me she brought up marriage, and he said he didn't want to legally complicate his assets. She pushed again, and he hit her with the classic, "You're pressuring me." A week later, she came to pick up our son and looked like someone had unplugged her. She tried to use our child as a bridge back. "Maybe we could do family dinners again," she said, like it was a cute idea. I asked, "Is this because you miss us, or because he's gone?" She rolled her eyes and snapped, "Why are you being like this?" That's when I realized she still wanted the old me. Soft, guilty, bendable. My reaction was a calm no. I offered flexibility with custody so she could sort her housing out. I offered a list of affordable apartments. I offered nothing romantic. She called me cold and I said, "No, I'm stable." You confused the two because you left stability for excitement. The wild part? A month later, my son told me, "Mom cries a lot now." That hurt. So I got him into counseling and kept our home steady. I couldn't fix her choices, but I could keep him from paying the interest on them. Story 17. My friend's ex-wife left him for a casino guy. Not a gambler, an executive. She told everyone she was finally with someone ambitious. Translation: the man had a suite, VIP access, and friends who wore suits like armor. She became a different person overnight. Suddenly my friend was basic because he worked a normal job and liked quiet weekends. She left him with the dog and a joint credit card bill, then posted from hotel rooftops like she'd escaped a prison. The casino guy dumped her when she did the unforgivable thing. She got emotional in public. She told me later she cried at a gala because he ignored her all night. He pulled her aside and hissed, "You're embarrassing me." The next day, he ended it, saying she was too much drama and that he needed a woman who understands discretion. His security team escorted her out of his building like she was trespassing. That detail haunted me. Imagine being someone's girlfriend and then being handled like a disturbance. She tried to come back to my friend with a speech about realizing what matters. My friend's reaction was the calmest shutdown I've ever seen. He said, "You didn't realize what matters. You lost what distracted you." She got mad and tried to flip it. "So you're just going to punish me?" He replied, "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself from someone who treats love like a ladder." I was there when she left his porch, furious and crying. My friend didn't slam the door. He just closed it quietly and leaned his forehead against it for a second, like he was choosing peace over pride. Story 18. My sister left her husband for a real estate king she met at an open house. He had the grin, the confidence, the car, the "I can change your life" sales voice. She started saying her ex was holding her back, even though he'd supported her through school and literally paid off her student loans. She moved into the realtor's house and instantly became his accessory. She hosted dinners, smiled in photos, wore outfits he picked out because branding matters. At first, she thought it was romance. Then she realized it was marketing. He dumped her when the market turned and his money got tight. Suddenly, she was expensive. He blamed her for wanting too much, even though he'd set the standard. The breakup line was the cruelest part. "You're not a good investment anymore." When she called me, she expected me to scream about karma. My reaction was rage, but not at her. At the way she'd been trained to mistake control for luxury. I let her cry. Then I said, "Listen carefully. You are not moving in with me unless you agree to therapy and a real plan. Not because I don't love you. Because I'm not letting you drag chaos into my home." She agreed. She moved into my guest room, got a job, started counseling. One night she admitted, "I left because I wanted to feel chosen." I told her, "He didn't choose you. He rented you." She's rebuilding now. Her ex-husband co-parents politely but wants nothing romantic. And honestly, I don't blame him. Love isn't supposed to feel like being appraised. Story 19. My ex-wife left me for her boss. He wasn't just rich, he was powerful. Private club memberships, black car service, name that got doors opened. She told me she wanted a grown man and that I was stuck. I remember thinking, wow, she's talking like she's already rehearsed the story for her friends. At first, I was devastated. Then I got practical. I documented everything, got a lawyer, and focused on our kids. I stopped stalking her social media because it was like rubbing salt into an open wound. The dumping happened the moment she threatened his reputation. She discovered he had another woman and confronted him at an office party. He smiled, kissed her cheek, and later sent her a text. "This can't continue. You're becoming a liability." The next day, HR called her in. Her job was restructured. She went from girlfriend to problem in 24 hours. She showed up at my house shaking, asking if we could talk. My reaction was colder than I expected from myself. I said, "We can talk about the kids. That's it." She tried to cry, saying she'd been manipulated. I didn't deny it, but I also didn't let it erase what she did to our family. She asked if I still loved her. I told her the truth. I love who I thought you were. I don't trust who you chose to be. I offered to adjust custody so she could job hunt. I didn't offer my heart. That part was closed. And for the first time, I realized boundaries aren't revenge. They're recovery. Story 20. My aunt left her husband for a wealthy pilot she met through friends. He was charming in that I've seen the world way. She fell hard, fast, like she'd been waiting for someone to sweep her out of routine. She called her marriage a cage and said the pilot made her feel alive. The pilot dumped her when she got sick. Not dying sick, just a rough health scare that required a few weeks of appointments and rest. She told him she needed support and he said he couldn't handle negativity. He literally said, "I don't want to be dragged down." Then he disappeared like a bad signal. She tried to come back to her ex-husband with a dramatic apology. He listened, then asked one question that ended everything. "If you hadn't gotten sick, would you be here?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. His reaction wasn't cruel. It was final. He said, "I forgive you as a person. I don't take you back as a partner." He helped her find a place near family, made sure she had rides to appointments, and kept their adult kids in the loop without poisoning them against her. Watching it, I realized something. Sometimes the rich guy isn't the villain in the story. Sometimes he's just the mirror that shows you what you were willing to trade away. The real consequences aren't the breakup. The real consequences are the relationships you can't unbreak after you've broken them once. Story 21. My ex-wife left me for a legacy trust fund guy who collected vintage cars and never carried his own bags. She told me she was tired of building and wanted to arrive. Cool. I signed the divorce, moved into a smaller place, and rebuilt my life like a guy reassembling furniture without instructions. A year later, she called sounding manic calm, like she was trying to keep her voice from cracking. Trust fund guy dumped her because she didn't fit the family culture. Apparently, his mother hosted a weekend at their estate and my ex said something harmless like, "I love how warm and normal you all are." The mom heard normal, like it was an insult. 2 days later, he told her gently that he couldn't fight bloodlines. Then came the humiliation. The breakup wasn't even a breakup. It was a transition plan. His family office mailed her a folder with moving dates and a reminder to return borrowed items, which included jewelry she thought were gifts. They also asked her to sign something promising she wouldn't misrepresent the relationship in public, like she was a PR risk. She asked if she could come home. I said, "You don't want home. You want rescue." She started crying and called me cruel. I told her, cruel was treating our marriage like a starter apartment. I did help in one way. I kept our kids extra nights so they didn't have to watch her fall apart. But I didn't take her back. When she asked why I was being so calm, I said, "Because I already grieved you when you left. This is just you arriving late to your own consequences." Story 22. I'm the daughter, not the ex-husband. My mom left my dad for a rich guy who owned restaurants and wore cologne like it was a weapon. I was 14. Mom said dad didn't dream big. Dad didn't argue. He just started packing my lunches again and showing up to my band concerts, even when my mom didn't. The rich guy dumped her right after she moved into his place. The reason was disgusting. He said he didn't sign up for kid drama. He loved dating her. But once I had a panic attack at his house, because, surprise, my life was imploding, he decided we were too complicated. He told her she was amazing, but needed to handle her situation. Then he blocked her. Mom came back to our old street like a ghost, asking Dad if she could stay until she figures it out. I listened from the stairs. Dad didn't yell. He said, "You can't live here, but you can come to dinner twice a week so she doesn't feel like her mother vanished." Mom tried to make it romantic. "We could try again," she said. Dad answered, "I'm not your safety net. I'm her father." Then he looked up at the stairs. He knew I was there, and added, "I won't teach her that love means accepting someone only when they have nowhere else to go." That sentence did more for me than therapy. Mom eventually got her own apartment. She's a better mom now, but Dad is the reason I still believe stability can be love, not boredom. Story 23. I was the mediator for a messy divorce. The wife left her husband for a wealthy consultant who flew business class and talked about mindset like it was oxygen. She was convinced she'd upgraded into a life where consequences don't apply. 3 months after the papers were signed, she begged for an emergency session. She'd been dumped. The consultant ended it because she wanted him to be publicly official. He told her he preferred discretion and that her divorce drama was bad for his brand. Then he sent her a Venmo labeled closure and blocked her. A Venmo. Like that's a relationship. She came into my office expecting sympathy and a strategy to win her ex back. The ex-husband showed up with a notebook and the calm of a man who'd already cried all his tears. She started with, "I made a mistake." He replied, "You made a decision." What stuck with me was his next line. "If you're here because you're lonely, I'm sorry. If you're here because you lost your sponsor, I'm unavailable." No insults. No revenge, just clarity. We spent the session on co-parenting, not reconciliation. She kept trying to pivot back to feelings. He kept pivoting back to schedules and school. At the end, she asked him, "Do you hate me?" He said, "I don't hate you. I just don't trust you with my heart again." As a professional, I've heard thousands of dramatic speeches. That quiet boundary was one of the loudest moments I've ever witnessed. Story 24. My ex-wife left me for a rich musician. Not famous, but rich enough to have a studio, a tour bus, and people telling him he was a genius even when he was being a jerk. She said life with me was predictable, and life with him was art. She became his muse. That's what she called it. She moved into his loft and started talking like every argument was a song lyric. Meanwhile, I was packing our kid's backpack and learning how to braid hair from YouTube. He dumped her after she asked him to stop flirting with fans. He told her jealousy was inauthentic energy, then wrote a breakup song about a woman who tried to cage a free spirit. He performed it at a small venue. Friends sent me videos because people are messy. She called me at 2 a.m., saying she felt humiliated. I expected to feel satisfied. Instead, I felt tired, like I'd been dragged back into a circus I didn't buy tickets for. She asked if she could come home. I said, "Home isn't a place you return to when your new life cancels you." She yelled that I was punishing her. I replied, "No, I'm refusing to punish myself. I did one thing. I offered to keep our kid full-time for a month so she could find housing and stop spiraling." She agreed and tried to thank me like I'd forgiven everything. I corrected her gently. "This isn't forgiveness. This is parenting." Funny enough, the musician later messaged her, asking if she wanted to hang as friends. She blocked him. That was the first mature move she'd made in a long time. Story 25. My ex-wife left me for a rich guy who owned a bunch of gyms and talked about high value, like he invented it. She got addicted to the attention. VIP sections, bottle service, people complimenting her like it was currency. She told me I didn't lead. I was literally leading our kids to school every morning, but sure. The rich guy dumped her when she stopped being fun. She got injured, couldn't keep up with the party lifestyle, and asked him to just stay in and watch movies. He told her she was bringing the mood down and that he needed a woman who matches his pace. Then he posted a photo the next week with a new girlfriend wearing my ex's exact favorite dress brand, like a replacement part. She showed up at my apartment angry, crying, trying to act casual about it, like she was the one who chose to leave. "He wasn't that great anyway," she said, wiping her face. Then she asked the real question, "Can we try again?" My reaction was not yelling. It was a checklist. I said, "We can talk about co-parenting. We can talk about therapy for you. We cannot talk about getting back together." She called me petty. I said, "Petty is picking a man for his lifestyle and then acting shocked when he treats you like an accessory." She tried to charm me, then guilt me, then insult me. None of it worked. That's when she got quiet and said, "So you're really done?" I nodded and told her, "I'm done being the place you land when someone else stops paying for the flight." She left, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace that didn't depend on her approval. That was the moment I knew the divorce didn't ruin my life. It returned it to me. Story 26. My ex-wife left me for a finance guy who owned a condo downtown and loved reminding everyone he could expense anything. She told me I wasn't driven enough, which was funny because I was the one getting up at 6 a.m. to make our kid lunch while she found herself. She moved in with him and immediately started acting like my life was a cautionary tale. She'd show up to exchanges in designer sunglasses and speak to me like I was a stranger who owed her respect. I stayed calm because the only thing that mattered was keeping our kid out of the blast radius. The finance guy dumped her after she met his parents. She tried to impress them, but his mom asked what she did for work. My ex joked, "I'm focusing on wellness right now." His mom smiled politely. 2 days later, he told her, "We're in different life stages." Translation: his family didn't want someone without proof she could carry herself. She called me furious, saying she'd been judged. I didn't disagree. I just said, "You wanted their world. Their rules come with it." She went quiet, then asked if she could stay with me until she finds a place. I said no, but I offered to keep our kid extra so she could apartment hunt without dragging him through chaos. She snapped, "So you don't care what happens to me?" I answered, "I care. I'm just not responsible for the life you chose." The next week, she tried to post like nothing happened, but the glow was gone. And honestly, that's when I realized my revenge fantasy wasn't watching her lose. It was watching myself stop being affected by her choices. Story 27. My buddy's ex-wife left him for a wealthy older man who owned a marina. She loved the status of it. Dock parties, boat names in cursive, people greeting her like she was royalty. She'd call my friend's small town like it was a crime. The rich guy dumped her in the pettiest way possible. He didn't want her dog on the yacht. She brought the dog one weekend thinking it was harmless. He flipped out about hair, smell, standards. She argued, he went cold. And by Monday, she got a message from his assistant saying her things would be boxed and left with security. My friend's reaction was pure boundaries. When she called crying, he asked one question, "Are you calling because you miss me or because you miss the yacht?" She got offended and said, "How can you say that?" He replied, "Because you didn't leave me for love. You left me for lifestyle." He did help her, but not romantically. He offered to take the dog for a few weeks while she found housing. He offered to swap custody weekends so she could interview for jobs. But he wouldn't let her move back in. She tried to shame him. "After everything, you're going to abandon me?" He said, "I'm not abandoning you. I'm refusing to abandon myself." When my friend told me, he didn't sound smug. He sounded relieved. Like he'd finally stopped auditioning for someone who only applauds when the lights are expensive. Story 28. My sister's friend left her husband for a rich guy who ran a luxury car rental business. She'd post videos opening garage doors like it was a movie reveal. She called her ex ordinary and acted like ordinary was a death sentence. The rich guy dumped her after she asked for access to his accounts. She said it was about planning a future, but he heard risk. He laughed and told her, "You're divorced for a reason." Then he locked her out of his house the same day he left for a business trip. She later found out the trip was with another woman. She went to her ex-husband's place with a suitcase and a dramatic apology. He didn't take the bait. He asked, "What did you learn?" She started crying and said, "I thought money meant safety." He replied, "Money means options. Safety means character." That line hit her like a brick. His reaction wasn't cruel. It was structured. He offered co-parenting counseling, a predictable schedule, and help moving her into a small apartment near the kids' school. He refused romance. He refused starting over. He told her, "I'm not the backup plan for when your upgrade fails." She tried to argue, but she couldn't. Because the truth was obvious. She wasn't coming back because she missed him. She was coming back because she'd been discarded. Story 29. My ex-wife left me for a quiet billionaire type. Private driver, no social media, dinners where the menu didn't have prices. She said she was tired of worry and wanted a life where problems could be solved with one phone call. She got that until she asked for exclusivity. He dumped her the moment she wanted a label. He told her he didn't do commitment because commitment meant expectations, and expectations meant inconvenience. He said he liked her as she was, which really meant as long as she didn't ask for anything real. When she pushed, he offered her money to start fresh and asked her to sign an NDA. She refused the NDA because she felt insulted, so he cut everything immediately. No more driver, no more apartment, no more access. She called me from a friend's couch, shocked that a man who could buy anything wouldn't buy decency. My reaction was a strange mix of pity and clarity. I told her, "You dated a lifestyle, not a person." She asked if I could just let her come back for a bit. I said, "I'll help with the kids. I'll help you find a place. But you don't get to re-enter my life like a hotel when your reservation elsewhere got canceled." She got angry, then quiet, then finally whispered, "I feel stupid." I said, "Feeling stupid is temporary. Staying in the same pattern is permanent. Don't make it permanent."